There's a common theme that seems to run through the stories told by people who confront the moment of death and then come back. They talk of a floating, out-of-body experience, of a brilliant white glow, of a strange peace of mind that envelops them in their final moment. But in the case of a migrant farm worker named Maria, something ridiculously mundane happened. She saw something, and the simple thing she saw changed a young medical professional's life forever.
First, it is a story of a shoe. An ordinary shoe in an extraordinary circumstance. It was a tennis shoe, the canvas type, well worn with laces that came all the way up to the top. It was dark blue but faded, and it was heavily scuffed along its side in the area of the little toe. One of its laces draped over the side and ran under its heel. The shoe was in no way exceptional, except in its location. It sat there precariously, high above ground, on a ledge on the 3rd story of Harborview Hospital in the city of Seattle, in the state of Washington. And its existence changed the life of this woman. She is the second part of the story. Her name is Kimberly Clark Sharp. She's an eminent medical professional in the United States. She's a mother with a master's degree in medical social work and is a faculty member at the University of Washington, an associate professor lecturing second-year medical students about issues of death and dying. The incident that links Kimberly Clark Sharp to the old shoe happened 17 years ago. It set her on a life course that went against everything she had been raised to believe.
I was not brought up to believe something like this. This wasn't, the closest I got to anything like this was maybe as a child hearing fairy tales. Brought up to believe something like this. This wasn't, the closest I got to anything like this was maybe as a child hearing fairy tales. In fact, my parents to this day think that I'm committing career suicide to even be in this, except that my career has flourished. So.
On the other hand, there are those in medical circles who regard Kim Sharp as one of the world's most astute authorities on near-death experiences. Aside from her traditional medical career, she is head of the Northwest chapter of the International Association of Near-Death Studies. Since the day she first saw the worn tennis shoe, she has recounted and recorded the near-death experiences of hundreds of patients who have gone beyond the brink of life and returned to tell incredible stories. But to this day, she remains most deeply affected by the story of a woman who had double cardiac arrest and returned to life in the intensive care ward of Harborview Hospital. The woman was a migrant worker named Maria. It was April 1976.
She had come to the big city for the first time, to the city of Seattle, had a massive heart attack.
As doctors fought to save Maria, her heart stopped for several minutes. It was a near miracle in itself that the doctors brought her back.
What she told me was that when she calmed down, was that during her resuscitation, she had found herself at the ceiling level, and she pointed to the corner of the ceiling, where she could look down and observe her own resuscitation.
And then she told Kim Sharp the story of the old shoe.
She felt like she was about 3 stories above the ground. And she is looking at a tennis shoe that's sitting on a ledge. She said the tennis shoe was dark blue, very worn, that there was a scruff placed by the little toe, and that she saw the lace going under the heel. And the reason she was agitated, the reason that she wanted to see somebody, is because she wanted someone to get the shoe.
There was no shoe on the ledge outside of Maria's window, but Kim Sharp was curious enough to look further.
So I start going from room to room to room, looking down on the ledges, so that I can go back to Maria and tell her that I have really done a thorough search.
But on the opposite side of the hospital, on a different floor altogether, Kim Sharp saw something.
I walked into one room, and this is such a vivid memory for me, because I remember the window. I remember walking to the window getting closer to me. The view was to the west. I had looked in many windows by this point and not seen anything. I looked down, and to my shock, my utter shock, there was a tennis shoe. It was dark blue. It was beat up. Now, from my perspective, looking down, I couldn't see the little toe area. The little toe area was on the outside of the building, not towards the building at all. I could see the tip of the lace coming out from under the heel. I had to presume that someplace on the outside of the shoe there was a continuum. There was a lace that indeed went under the shoe in order for me to see what was coming out. I could not believe my eyes. I opened the window and reached down and plucked out the shoe.
Maria's description of the shoe had been accurate to the last intricate detail, all the way down to the scuffed area of the left toe. There were no other buildings on that side of the hospital.
She felt like she was about 3 stories above the ground, and she is looking at a tennis shoe that's sitting on a ledge. She said the tennis shoe was dark blue, very worn, that there was a scuffed place by the little toe, and that she saw the lace going under the heel. And the reason she was agitated, the reason that she wanted to see somebody, is because she wanted someone to get the shoe.
There was no shoe on the ledge outside of Maria's window, but Kim Sharp was curious enough to look further.
I start going from room to room to room, looking down on the ledges, so that I can go back to Maria and tell her that I have really done a thorough search.
But on the opposite side of the hospital, on a different floor altogether, Kim Sharp saw something.
I walked into one room, and this is such a vivid memory for me, because I remember the window. I remember walking to the window getting closer to me. The view was to the west. I had looked in many windows by this point and not seen anything. I looked down, and to my shock, my utter shock, there was a tennis shoe. It was dark blue. It was beat up. Now, from my perspective, looking down, I couldn't see the little toe area. The little toe area was on the outside of the building, not towards the building at all. I could see the tip of the lace coming out from under the heel. I had to presume that someplace on the outside of the shoe there was a continuum. There was a lace that indeed went under the shoe in order for me to see what was coming out. I could not believe my eyes. I opened the window and reached down and plucked out the shoe.
Maria's description of the shoe had been accurate to the last intricate detail, all the way down to the scuffed area of the left toe. There were no other buildings on that side of the hospital. Such details on the outer rim of the shoe could not be seen from anywhere on the ground or from anywhere inside the hospital.
I took the shoe. I went back to Maria, but I put it behind my back, and then I brought the shoe around and showed her. And we both began to cry and hug, and it was a very emotional moment. It was like a miracle had happened, and I had had the privilege of being a part of this.
true nature of the Bermuda Triangle, the essence of its dark patterns, has never been revealed to man. There is one person, however, who may hold a key to the secret. A distinguished author, explorer, investigator of the mysteries of the pyramids and the sea.
Deep down there, and mysterious. I'm Peter Tompkins. I spent a lifetime trying to crack some of the mysteries of this universe as a sort of sporting challenge, trying not to get caught. One of the more deceptively tranquil areas of this planet lies within the boundaries of what's known as the Bermuda Triangle.
At the dead center of the triangle, I've flown over these stones built into a curious rectangle. A native sponge pen, or the submerged remains of a vanished civilization? The key to the secret of the triangle. The apex of the triangle is the British colony of Bermuda, 152 tiny islands stretched over 22 miles of open sea. Tourists that pass through every year. But in this quest, it is just a point of departure. True adventure has no guidebooks. The ocean off Bermuda is a museum of maritime disaster. The encrusted remains of the great and the small, the capsized fishing boat, the torpedoed ship of war. I've seen them before with their gaping holes and snapped spars, open for inspection. But where, among these familiar wrecks, is the ruin of the cargo ship Cotopaxi, last seen in these waters December 11th, 1925? The luxury yacht Revenac, lost en route to a New Year's Eve party in the final hours of 1957, of a score of other ships. The records show that they must lie here. In fact, they do not, and this is but one corner of the triangle. Beneath these waters, the 20th century addition to the carnage of the sea. These are easier to find, for the airplane does not drift aimlessly before sinking. It is a dead weight that plunges from its last known position to the ocean floor. Here they join the multitude of rotting galleons, clippers, and steamers that have become a part of the bright coral off Miami. But I find no trace of the U.S. chartered DC-3, of the British airliners Star Tiger and Star Ariel, or the 5 other great airships that were lost here in a single decade. It is not the wreckage, but the absence of wreckage that holds our interest. There is no great mystery surrounding the wreck of the Gelderland. These are hard waters. No, it is not the spectacular wrecks that interest me, so much as it is the victims who vanish without trace or reason. Counting only from 1940, more than 100 planes and ships and over 1,000 human beings have set off into the triangle only to disappear, apparently forever. Many of those who live in the pleasant ports that line the edges of the triangle have been touched for one or more terrible moments by forces they've been unable to explain. Not crackpots and publicity seekers, but seasoned professionals, down-to-earth men and women, not given to flights of fancy. Such a man is Carlton Hamilton, who personally guided over 2 million aircraft safely into Miami. More than once in all his many years as an air traffic controller, he came into direct contact with forces that even he could not understand.
I had 34 years experience in air traffic control and was on duty at Miami International Tower, working from midnight until 8 in the morning. On duty with one other person at the time. The weather conditions was very good that night. In C-46, it was en route from Bogota, Colombia to Miami, descending from 8,000 to 6,000. The pilot of this aircraft I had known for quite some time. He was an experienced pilot and had flown that route many, many times. I asked him to report leaving 6,000 feet. I did not receive this report when I thought I should, and I started calling the aircraft and could not get any response from it.
What is your...
This particular C-46 pilot had the experience to know that if he had the shoreline lights in sight and something went wrong with the aircraft, to maintain a visual contact reference with those lights.
Carlton Hamilton, who has always kept meticulous records, still puzzles over the events of that night in 1949.
During this particular watch, all communications had been normal. We had experienced no difficulty with any of our radios. There was no trace of the aircraft or any of its cargo that was ever found. My belief is that the aircraft did experience total navigational failure. I believe that this was caused by some type of condition that exists in the so-called Devil's Triangle.
Here we have a controller and a pilot, both intimately familiar with electronic phenomena. Yet somehow it failed them that night, and Carlton Hamilton doesn't know how. It is the first evidence of a connection between electromagnetism and the triangle. 27 years later, in the air over Miami, they are exploring other possible explanations.
WFTL, you're on the air.
Hi, Ray. I've heard that the Coast Guard has actually sighted UFOs coming in and going out of the Bermuda Triangle. Is that true? And what do you think about that?
Well, I think people have seen UFOs entering and leaving the water in the area of the Bermuda Triangle. This area is one of the highest concentrations of UFO sightings in the world, as a matter of fact. If the Coast Guard...
It is the night of April 13, 1975. Ray Smithers, a Fort Lauderdale radio personality, is conducting a hotline show on the Bermuda Triangle.
Have to do with the Bermuda Triangle?
Interest is obviously intense, and the lines are jammed. But it is not this electric response that makes it the most memorable show in Ray Smithers' long career. Although it was later established the calls were piling up, suddenly no one would be able to get through. Smithers was about to be isolated. His studio was a total vacuum.
Let's go to another call. WFTL, you're on the air. Bermuda Triangle, you're on the air. There's no one on that line. Let's try Bermuda Triangle, you're on the air. Now those lines are dead. Let's try some other lines, see if we can get some calls on the air. Bermuda Triangle, you're on the air.
There's one of you on the program who will understand what I'm going to say. Each and every living thing on this planet has an aura. Is its communication with the millionth council who governs this planet. The area that you are discussing now is the aura of this planet. It is the communicative channel through which the millionth council governs this planet.
Which council, sir?
The millionth council.
The millionth?
Millionth.
A tape of this broadcast was sent to Los Angeles for scrutiny by voice analyst John Hickman. Studying stress variations in speech, he can tell whether a man is speaking the truth.
Disappear, but they are in the timeless void. They are all perfectly alive and well. It is the only area through which the council can communicate.
He's showing stress in that paragraph, which is the significant paragraph, on anyone going into the area, do not disappear, alive and well, and then when he says it's the only area through which the council can communicate. In conclusion, the patterns exhibited on the strip chart indicate that this was not a prank or a hoax call, and the caller believes what he is saying.
Anyone going into the area when the communicative channel is open do not disappear, but they are in the timeless void. They are all perfectly alive and well. It is the only area through which the council can communicate with this planet.
mysterious voice in the night, talking of a timeless void. Such talk could be ignored if it went for a wealth of documentation on strange disappearances. Stepping onto a real ghost ship gives a powerful feeling of interrupted life. Who can explain away the case of the nameless schooner found drifting between Bermuda and the Bahamas on August 20, 1881? Undamaged, fully stocked with provisions, absolutely empty. And there's more. She was boarded by a prize crew from the schooner Ellen Austin. The ships were separated for 2 days by a storm. When they came together again, the nameless schooner was shipshape, but the prize crew had vanished. Even more eerie is the story that a second prize crew was placed aboard her, that the two boats stayed within 10 lengths of each other, and that not only the second prize crew, but the nameless ship itself disappeared for good. December 1946. The schooner City Belle sailed out of Nassau with 24 persons aboard. 3 days later, she was found drifting at sea, cargo intact, logbook in order, with the personal effects of 24 human beings hanging neatly on hooks. Those who claim such disappearances are proof of the existence of UFOs. Advocates of these theories maintain that from a sound and stable ship, human beings do not jump into oblivion. They would have to be plucked by some extraterrestrial hand as guinea pigs for a lab in outer or inner space. Controversy is lively between the supporters of these far-out notions and those who support the most prosaic explanations such as sharks or careless swimming or kidnappings by ocean-going pirates.
Why Bobby Mackey's here in Wilder is considered one of the most haunted nightclubs in the country. I got a little history lesson from Angie Johnson of Gatekeeper Paranormal, who's been doing tours here since 2012.
The mob actually, they purchased this property in the early 1900s and even into the 50s and 60s. And there's some rumors that even today, right, that there's some of that activity.
Violent activity. That combined with other urban legends has made this a hotbed for people seeing and hearing things.
99% of the time, there is usually a scientific explanation for what we are experiencing. There's just that 1% that you can't explain. We have heard what sounds like a female voice humming or singing, and there's been many times that we have heard what sounds like heavy footsteps back in the behind stage. We often will hear heavy footsteps on the dance floor. We'll even hear chairs scooting. Plain as day, you can hear a female voice say, "Yoo-hoo, I'm here, hello." But a lot of people claim that they'll feel what feels like a cat kind of rubbing up against their legs. And there's a young man that was leaning up against this pool table, and she described him to perfect detail. He's there 1 second, and the next he's gone.
Johnson says she personally has seen a lot of these things.
Hello? we're hearing things over here. Hello? Is there someone there? I just heard something over there.
A lot of the time, she attributes it to Carl, the old caretaker who used to live upstairs, who recently passed.
He was bathing, taking a bath, and he felt two hands grab his shoulders and try to push him under. There was an exorcism performed on him up here in this area.
While the upstairs is creepy enough, Johnson then took me down to the basement.
And here is what people refer to as the portal to hell. We've had things thrown at people in here, just nothing violent, just like little pebbles to get your attention.
All the while, I'm skeptical until
Did you hear that? That's upstairs.
We then proceed to what Johnson says was a torture chamber.
I have watched grown men, such as yourself, in here and just panic and run out.
And of course the wall of faces, just to round things out. At the end of the tour, we tried to communicate.
Hello, is there anyone in here with us today?
To no avail, which was honestly fine by me. But if you want your chance at seeing something that'll send shivers to your spine, Bobby Mackey's is a great place to start. In Wilder, Sam Neff, Spectrum News.
There's an old story about a well in the basement, what got tossed into.
What does that got to do with anything?
Well, maybe everything. They said it happened 100 years ago. A woman was found murdered, all cut up. They caught the two killers. On the day of their hanging, the first man went down without a sound. Then the judge tried to make a deal with the other. If he told where he put her head, he'd only get life.
You bastard. Tell us.
I'll tell you nothing.
Wait!
I curse you, and men like you. Men who think that they can judge me. Any man who presumes to interfere with the work of the Dark Lord shall suffer. For all time. May your God help you.
They say he was hung right outside.
Anything else you haven't told us? Why didn't you say something earlier?
In 1863, a rectory was built here, and just about every strange phenomena have been reported over the years.
So, Peter Underwood, you are president of the Ghost Club in England, which makes you one of the leading ghost hunters. And here we are at Borley Rectory, one of the most haunted houses in the country. Is that right?
Well, yes, but we're not actually at Borley Rectory, because Borley Rectory stood over there and is no longer there. But I'm quite convinced, beyond any shadow of doubt, that the house that stood just across the road was and fully lived up to its name as the most haunted house in England.
Why are you convinced?
The accumulation of evidence over the years is absolutely shattering. It all began with a legend, and of course the most familiar aspect of the haunting is a ghost nun, which has been seen for something like, well, nearly 100 years. One of the rectors even bricked up one of the windows because he said the phantom nun looked in at him having his breakfast. But over the years, phantom figures have been seen, footsteps have been heard, solid, heavy footsteps on floorboards. Messages have been scribbled on the walls and on pieces of paper, apparently from a French nun asking for light, mass and prayers. Bones have been found, 2 skulls have been found, one was buried in the churchyard, the other...
Were they identified as women, or female, or...?
One of them was identified as a young female, and it's rather interesting because a dental surgeon discovered that there was a deep-seated abscess in the jawbone, and nearly all the people who have reported seeing the nun have said that she appeared sad-faced, unhappy, and of course with a deep-seated abscess she would indeed.
So really we're talking about a ghost of a nun with toothache?
That's what it sounds like, yes, yes. But putting all that on one side, the fact remains you've got the incumbencies of 4 rectors from 1892, from 1863 rather, until 1935, 4 rectors, their families, wives, many friends and relatives, all of whom assert that they heard, saw and felt things which they can't explain. And I think the accumulative evidence is absolutely overwhelming that this was indeed the most haunted house in England. It was in 1937 that when the Smiths were here, Smith had recently come to England from India, and he just walked into this and he wondered what was happening. He saw a figure, he saw a phantom coach, his lights suddenly blared up, bells rang. He didn't know what to do, and he wrote to the national paper, and they sent down Harry Price, who was the leading psychic investigator at that time. And of course he was fascinated once he heard the story and started making inquiries. The ecclesiastical authorities decided that the house was no longer suitable for a rector to live in, and Price decided to rent it. And he rented the place for a year, arranged independent investigators who again reported identical phenomena, footsteps, lights, noises, bell ringing and so on. And then the place was sold privately to a Crackton Grigson, and while he owned it, a somewhat mysterious fire took place and the place was gutted. But the interesting thing is that once the rectory was destroyed and there was no building on the site, then the entities apparently transferred their activities to the church, where visiting rectors have seen figures, have heard noises. Many visitors have reported footsteps following them up the church path inside the church itself.
At Epping, working on the M11 motorway extension, is one of Borley's most remarkable witnesses. Mr. Crewe Hollingsworth and a team of investigators taped recordings in the church and spent many nights observing the rectory grounds.
I got a team together with Roy Potter, and we did actually on the site of the rectory. We concentrated mostly.
Have you seen anything there?
Oh yes. In June, I can't remember the exact date, but in June we sighted the nun.
You did?
Oh yeah, 2 of us.
What time of day?
I would say somewhere about 1:45 in the morning it was. It was absolutely full moon. And first of all, we couldn't really, we were astonished. But when we saw this apparition go through bushes and through railings and across a trench, we knew we were really onto something. So we had an observation actually 11 minutes, and I had a...
How long?
11 minutes.
You watched a ghost for 11 minutes?
11 minutes, exactly. Well, I wouldn't say exactly, but around about 11 minutes. 9 to 11 minutes. Now, this, I had a wonderful view of her, because she came towards me, and then she stood still for some time, and I was able to have a good look at the nun. She actually started on the original old nun's ward, which is in the back garden of some people's bungalow. And she disappeared in the back part of their bungalow, and then she reappeared and came across into the rectory part. Actually, she finished up behind the rectory and disappeared in some shrubs there. The nun, when she's looking at you, she's not seeing you at all. She's not seeing you. Even when she was supposed to stand in the old days of Harry Price, stand looking in the rectory window, she's not seeing the rectory. She's in her own period. She is seeing something that's there in her period. And that's why she appeared about a foot from the ground, which I...
She wasn't on the ground?
Well, she was a foot above it. Now, this was due, I'm sure, to the original level. Since then, the ground has sunk. So I would say she was at the original level in her
Pretty
period.
weird experience you're telling me about.
Oh, well...
A woman gliding along a foot above the ground for 10 minutes.
Well, it may seem absurd to you, but I'm going by what I saw. And this, of course, has been substantiated by my chief investigator, who is a very hard-headed person, doesn't believe in this type of thing. In fact, her reaction was to throw a brick.
Throw a brick?
Yes,
At her?
Yes, and went right through, actually.
That's an unkind thing to do.
Well, no, I think it was a good thing to do, because it actually proved that it was nothing fake. Actually, I got it.
According to records, the last Borley Rectory was constructed on Hall Road near Borley Church by the Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Ball in the year 1862, and he moved there a year after being named as rector of the parish. The house replaced an earlier rectory on site that had been destroyed by fire in 1841. It was eventually enlarged by the addition of a wing to house Ball's family of 14 children. It's worth noting that in the 1950s, when they carried out an archaeological excavation of the site, the earliest remains they could find of a rectory dated to around the year 1550 to 1600. Interestingly enough, this finding underscored research by historians in 1939 who claimed there were no records of any religious institution such as a Benedictine priory as ever being built there. A year later, the first paranormal event reportedly occurred, with a few locals having heard unexplained footsteps within the house about that time. Various people claim to have witnessed a variety of puzzling incidents, such as a phantom coach driven by 2 headless horsemen during the next 4 decades. The Reverend Henry Ball, who died in 1892, was also subject to what he reported as paranormal phenomena, but according to his death certificate, he died from locomotor ataxia, which today is known as tabes dorsalis, or in layman's terms, syphilis of the spinal cord and its appendages, and is characterized by shooting pains and other sensory disturbances, and in the later stages by paralysis and death. He also apparently had fathered a number of illegitimate children who also lived at the rectory. After he passed over, his son, the Reverend Henry, or Harry Foyster Ball, took over the living. On the 28th of July 1900, 4 daughters of the rector saw what they thought was the ghost of a nun at twilight and about 40 yards from the house. They tried to talk to it, but it disappeared as soon as they got closer. On one notable occasion, one of the daughters captured a photograph of what they reported to be the ghost nun. Although the clothing worn by the nun appears to be period authentic to their era, and according to more skeptical minds, seems to be one of the daughters, and even more curiously is the fact that the sisters reported seeing a nun dressed in dark clothing, yet this ghost manifestation is wearing light-coloured clothing and nothing at all like a nun's habit. The local organist, Mr. Ernest Ambrose, later said that the family at the rectory were very convinced that they had seen an apparition on several occasions. And sadly, on the 9th of June 1928, the sickly Harry Ball died and the rectory again became vacant. In the following year, on the 2nd of October, the Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife moved into the house. Soon after moving in, Smith's wife was shocked while cleaning out a cupboard to come across a brown paper package containing the skull of a young woman. Shortly after, the family reported a variety of incidents, including the sounds of servant bells ringing despite them being disconnected, lights appearing in windows, and unexplained footsteps. In addition, Smith's wife believed she saw a horse-drawn carriage at night. In June 1929, events took a sudden change when the news editor of the Daily Mirror received from one of his staff a letter sent by the rector's wife, Mrs. Smith, asking if his paper knew of the address of the Society of Psychical Research, as they were experiencing unusual happenings in the rectory and wanted them to be investigated. Instead, he dispatched the seasoned reporter, Mr. V.C. Wall, to investigate. Wall, who arrived on the 10th of June, stayed for a week but witnessed nothing unusual. But in true journalistic fashion, he made up stories based on reports involving headless coachmen, nuns, and dragging footsteps. The Smiths were naturally puzzled as to why only a reporter had arrived to start asking awkward questions. Wall reported this difficulty back to his office. The news editor of the Mirror then contacted a committed spiritualist who was preeminent at the time in the investigation of seances, in the form of Mr. Harry Price. The result was a tsunami of headline stories in the Daily Mirror. Harry Price, who arrived on the 12th of June, immediately reported new phenomena such as the throwing of stones, a vase and other objects. Spirit messages were tapped out also from the frame of a mirror. When they challenged Harry Price as to why he had taken charge of the case when they had requested the Society for Psychical Research, he explained that he attended as a foreign representative of the American Society for Psychical Research. Harry Price stayed only a couple of days in this first week and did not return while the Smiths were in residence, and as soon as he left, these events ceased. Smith's wife later maintained that she already suspected Price, an expert conjurer, of falsifying the phenomena. And they weren't alone in their suspicions, because two staff members, Mary Pearson and Fred Tatum, reported the following as related by Mr. Tatum. There was an incident at his first luncheon when Eva pepper of salt shot across the table, and Price made some reference, no doubt in jocular vein, to ghosts. Later, Mary told Mrs. Smith that she distinctly had seen Price throw one of the other condiments. On another occasion, when they were in the scullery, a storm lantern went out, and Fred was strongly of the opinion that Price had manipulated the wick. Nevertheless, Mr. Wall stayed on and reported back to his daily story. At one time, on the 11th of June, he mistook Mary Pearson, the maid, for the ghost of a nun. She later admitted that she had put the apron over her head as a prank. And on another occasion, the gardener's bonfire seen at twilight was reported back to the Mirror as a spirit. For the night of June the 16th, he had two professional mediums sent down from London. But with Harry Price gone, absolutely nothing had happened. They sat anxiously in darkness at the rectory for many hours to no effect. Mr. Wall seemed unsurprised and phoned through a light-hearted piece, saying that the ghost had flatly declined to exhibit itself. The Smiths had decided that they had had enough and left Borley on the 14th of July 1929, with the parish having some difficulty in finding a replacement. The following year, the Reverend Lionel Algernon Foyster, a first cousin of the Balls, and his wife Marianne, moved into the rectory with their adopted daughter Adelaide on the 16th of October 1930. Lionel Foyster wrote an account of various strange incidents that occurred between the time the Foysters moved in and October 1935 when they moved out, and this was sent to Harry Price. These included bell ringing, windows shattering, throwing of stones, bottles, wall writing, and the locking of their daughter in a room with no key. Marianne Foyster reported to her husband a whole range of poltergeist phenomena that included her being thrown from the bed. Before I delve more into the Foysters' tenure at Borley, here is some background on their relationship which may or may not explain some of the alleged paranormal events purportedly witnessed by Marianne. She was 22 years younger than her husband Lionel, and he was in very poor health, suffering from rheumatoid arthritis. Lionel and Marianne had been married in Brunswick, Nova Scotia in August 1922, when she was 23 and he 45. What was not revealed is the fact that Marianne was still married to an Irishman, a Mr. Greenwood, who she married in 1914 when she was just 15. She had lied about her age, claiming in fact that she was 17, and despite her marriage to Lionel, there was absolutely no proof of a divorce. The relationship between Lionel and Marianne seems to have been more than a little strange. Lionel clearly worshipped his young wife. What Lionel didn't know was that she was having a torrid affair with a lodger, a man by the name of Frank Peerless from Bermuda in London. Lionel later supported both Marianne and Peerless by investing into a flower shop business in Wimbledon. While this business was in operation, Marianne and Peerless lived in London during the week and only returned to Borley at weekends. Suffice to say, people in London were under the impression that both Marianne and Peerless were married. Both she and Peerless had a sometimes violent relationship. On at least one occasion, Marianne explained to Harry Price that the black eye that she was sporting was caused by the Borley ghost, but it seems much more likely that this was a result of her constantly feuding with Peerless. In 1934, the flower shop went out of business and things briefly became very complicated when Peerless attempted to blackmail Lionel by threatening to reveal details of his affair with Marianne to the church authorities. This was resolved when Peerless ran off and later married a 16-year-old girl who had worked in the shop. By now, this situation had placed the Foysters in some financial difficulty. It was clear that Lionel's ill health meant that he would not be able to work for much longer. What little money the couple had left went when the flower shop business failed. In late 1934, Marianne moved into a flat in Ipswich, where she lived as Miss Foyster while Lionel stayed in Borley. In February 1935, Marianne married Henry Fisher, despite the fact that on paper she was still married to Lionel. Fisher was a man troubled by mental health problems, though he was a person of independent means thanks to his wealthy family. Incredibly, Mr. and Mrs. Fisher then returned to live briefly at Borley Rectory with Marianne's father, Lionel. One can only imagine how painful this must have been for him. In October 1935, Marianne, Lionel and Fisher left Borley Rectory and moved into a cottage near Ipswich. Lionel was by now so ill he was unable to work, and he lived in a converted loft space above the cottage, posing as Marianne's devoted but bedridden father. This marks the end of the Foysters' association with Borley. Because of the publicity in the Daily Mirror, these incidents attracted the attention of several psychic researchers, who, after investigation, were unanimous in suspecting that they were caused by Marianne Foyster. Harry Price was born in Streatham in South London in the year 1881. As a child, Price had a very inquiring mind and developed many interests, particularly so in astronomy, performance art, conjuring and archaeology. Around 1898, Price began attending evening spiritualist meetings and also took part in some private seances, which initiated his interest into the paranormal. He also developed an interest in coin collecting. In 1908, he moved to Pulborough, West Sussex, and worked as a salesman for paper merchants, and as a side interest wrote articles for 2 local newspapers. He later married an heiress, Constance Mary Knight, and they settled for the next 40 years in that town. This freedom from the necessities of having to work for a living gave Harry Price the ability to delve into his many interests, with spiritualism being the top of his priorities. Her family, however, the Knights, have strongly disagreed with the contention that Price lived from her private income, but here I digress. In 1920, Price joined the Society for Psychical Research, the SPR, and during the 1920s, Price exposed a number of fake but famous mediums and gained a reputation for this field of paranormal research. Price formed an organisation in 1926 called the National Laboratory for Psychical Research, as a rival to the Society for Psychical Research, because of a number of disputes he had with them. In 1924, the National Laboratory of Psychical Research, which held Price's collection, was reconstituted as the University of London Council for Psychical Investigation. He had earlier made a formal offer to the University of London to equip and endow a department of psychical research and loan the equipment of the National Laboratory and its library. Price was also friends with other debunkers of fraudulent mediums, including Harry Houdini and the journalist Ernest Palmer. But the career high point in Harry's life came at the end of the 1920s when, following a call from the Daily Mirror, he visited to investigate Borley Rectory. Borley remained vacant for some time after the Foysters' departure, and in May 1937 Price took out a one-year-long rental agreement with the Queen Anne's Bounty, which is basically the church commissioners, the owners of the property. Through an advertisement in the Times on the 25th of May 1937 and subsequent personal interviews, Price recruited a corps of 48 official observers, mostly students who spent periods mainly during weekends at the rectory with the instructions to report any phenomena that occurred. Here is an interesting account given by Charles Winter, a former Times newspaper editor who ran into Price's corps as an official observer. While at Borley, Winter came to two conclusions. One is that the rectory was indeed haunted, but on the dark side, in his opinion, Price was egging up some of the events which were alleged to have taken place, which of course cast a serious doubt on the credibility of the entire investigation. The experiences alleged by Marianne Forster seemed to gain some traction when in March 1938 Helen Glanville, the daughter of S.J. Glanville, one of Price's helpers, conducted a planchette séance in Streatham in South London. Price reported that she made contact with two spirits, the first of which was that of a young nun who identified herself as Marie Lair. According to the planchette story, Marie was a French nun who left her religious order and travelled to England to marry a member of the Waldegrave family, the owners of Borley's 17th century manor house, Borley Hall. She was said to have been murdered in an older building on the site of the rectory, and her body either burned in the cellar or thrown into a disused well. The wall writings were alleged to be her pleas for help. One read, "Marianne, please help me get out." The second spirit to be contacted identified himself as Sunek Samares and claimed that he would set fire to the rectory at 9 o'clock that night on the 27th of March 1938. He also said at that time that the bones of a murdered person would be revealed.
Smith, VC Wall, your husband contacted my editor?
From the Psychic Research Society?
Daily Mirror.
I think there's been some misunderstanding.
Mrs. Smith, I believe you've been at the mercy of ghosts. Ghostly figures of headless coachmen. A nun, believed to have been bricked up within the walls, that appears and vanishes mysteriously. A screaming girl at the window of the blue room, dragging footsteps in empty halls. The scene of the ghostly visitations is the rectory at Borley, a few miles from Long Melford, Suffolk. It is a building erected on part of the site of a great monastery, which, in the Middle Ages, was the scene of a gruesome tragedy. The present rector, the Reverend G.E. Smith, and his wife made the rectory their residence in the face of warnings by previous occupiers. Since their arrival, they have been puzzled and startled by a series of peculiar happenings which cannot be explained and which confirm rumours they heard before moving in. The villagers dread the neighbourhood of the rectory after dark and will not pass it.
Psychical research. A popular opinion says that it means going to seances, holding hands in the dark, singing hymns, and perhaps getting in touch with your dead relatives. But in this, popular opinion is only partly correct, because it is confusing a psychical research with a spiritualism. A psychical research is a science and is rapidly becoming an exact science. Its object is to ascertain by exact experimental methods how far the alleged phenomena of the seance room can be brought into line with normality. These phenomena, which are produced by people who claim abnormal powers and who call themselves mediums, can be divided into physical and mental. The mental includes clairvoyance, psychometry, the direct voice which spirits are supposed to produce at seances, and similar manifestations. The physical phenomena includes telekinesis, or the abnormal movement of objects without physical contact, the poltergeist phenomena you read about in connection with haunted houses, and similar manifestations. There is an idea that the study of alleged abnormal phenomena is quite modern, but that is not the case. People have been interested in psychic phenomena from the very earliest times, and even the literature of the subject is very old. In our research library of some 12,000 volumes, we have books going back right to the 16th century. I'll show you one or two. For instance, here is one here written by Louis Levata. It is called Of Ghosts and Spirits Walking by Night, and this must be the very first book printed in English which deals with survival as we know it today. I'll show you another one. Here is one written by Oliver Goldsmith and deals with the famous Cock Lane ghost. The extraordinary part of this book is that it describes a séance in a girl's bedroom exactly as if it might have been written yesterday. But modern research proceeds on vastly different lines to what it did in the 16th century. We now require a fully equipped laboratory, which I'll show you. If a man comes to us and says that he can produce abnormal phenomena, then we test him by instrumental means. We have a number of special instruments for this purpose, including a dictaphone, a cinematograph projector and cameras, X-ray apparatus, infrared, ultraviolet, and many others, such as microscopes, etc. Now here are some very ingenious slates which I have taken out of our museum of such objects. Now these slates are very ingenious. Here you see a pair of simple slates, but not quite so simple. And when I tell you I gave £8 for them, you will know that there is a reason for the cost. A touch of a spring and you notice that they are covered with writing and a drawing of an alleged spirit. Here is another exhibit from our museum. Apparently it is a very well-made mahogany box, which I will proceed to lock. Now that, to all intents and purposes, is locked fast. But by touching a screw here, one can open the box, whether it is locked or not. This is the kind of thing that some fraudulent mediums use, although not, of course, under any scientific control. I will now show you the very ingenious mechanism of this box in detail. You will see that the staple has been caught in the lock. Of course, the staple has come from the lid. When I close the box again and replace this pin, you'll notice the box is again locked. I will now unlock it, and of course the staple is back in the lid again, although it would defy anyone to find where the mechanism was hidden. We get some extraordinary investigations to do, but I think the most extraordinary was the opening of Joanna Southcott's famous box. This box was opened at the Church House, Westminster in 1927, and a wave of excitement passed through the audience as I cut the steel bag. The box contained the most extraordinary collection of objects. Here is a wire puzzle, a very ancient puzzle. Joanna Southcott's nightcap, very curious. A dice box, but what Joanna wanted with a dice box I can't say. A lottery ticket, number 382 for 1814. I'm afraid it didn't win anything. A horse pistol. An ancient purse full of really very valuable coins. This is the most interesting exhibit. Books, several books as a matter of fact, and a piece of paper printed on the Thames, February the 3rd, 1814. Well, I have shown you the very curious contents of that box, but I'm afraid that there was nothing in it which Joanna Southcott said would save the nation in a time of emergency. Well, you have seen our laboratory, and we are now back in the library, which is also our science room, where all our tests are held. I will now show you our latest piece of apparatus. Here is a box like a sentry box, which was made to test an alleged clairvoyant or thought reader. this man stated that he could find hidden objects in a room. So we had our suspicions that he found these objects by watching the audience or by getting indicia from the movements of the audience. So we had this box made so that we could cover up portions of a person's anatomy, a part at a time. For instance, that's panel number 1. We found that our theory was correct, because when the person who knew where the object was entirely hidden in this box, the clairvoyant failed. He could not find the hidden object. Now here is a totally different piece of apparatus. If a man comes to us and says that he can make objects move without physical contact, we try this table on him. This table is in 2 portions. It's really a cage within a cage, and the center portion rises. We hoped it would rise by psychic power, but unfortunately we have never got it to rise by those means yet. But this is a fraud-proof table. Inside the table are various musical toys, like a toy piano and the panpipes, etc. The 8 panels in this table can only be moved by opening this flap and putting one's hand down into the table. Therefore, if we get any of these musical toys being worked upon while we are sitting round the table, and the flap is closed, then we know that the noises have been caused, or rather the movements have been caused by abnormal means, and we proceed further with our investigations. So you see that psychical research means a good deal of knowledge about many things, but we are progressing. Not only are we progressing, but orthodox science is taking a very keen interest in the subject, and already many universities in various parts of the world, as for instance at Leiden in Holland, Duke University in America, Johns Hopkins University in America, and more recently a group connected with the University of London has been formed, and it is hoped that some information will be derived from our experiments. In conclusion, I do earnestly hope and trust that any of you who come across cases of hauntings, poltergeists, unusual happenings of any sort will communicate with me, care of the Movietone News.
Peter Underwood's Ghost Watch.
A few years ago, I spent a night at Newark Park in Gloucestershire, a house where strange rustling sounds, as though a person dressed in trading clothes was moving around, had been reported many times. Fearful visitors had also heard disembodied voices. Clear and distinct footsteps echoed along deserted passageways. The sound of rattling chains was reported, and there was talk of an unnatural coldness. I had gone there with other investigators to ghost watch. That first night we concentrated on a staircase landing where the rustling and voices had been heard from time to time for over 70 years. In half an hour, 4 members of our team heard it. We waited for voices, but no luck. We decided to sit again in the same place, and this time take with us recording equipment, together with a camera loaded with infrared film that takes photographs in darkness. We hoped that even if we saw nothing, the camera might pick up whatever might be there. The recorder was running, the camera ready, but we heard nothing. The next day we ran the tape through, just in case the recorder had picked up anything we hadn't heard. There were 2 faint but distinct voices on the tape. A man's voice said, "It's looking," and a woman's, "It's looking at us." Could they have been talking about the camera lens pointing at them? It's a pity we didn't take any pictures. Those voices remain a mystery and a lasting reminder of our ghost hunt in the Cotswolds. I'm Peter Underwood. I'll be back on Ghost Watch soon.
Reaching out from the world that lies beyond, they glide through the portals of our imagination. They shouldn't exist, but they do. They appear in the wink of an eye and vanish in the pound of a heartbeat. Where they come from, what they want, only they know. They are beyond life, beyond death, to some of us, beyond belief. But you are about to meet ordinary men and women who have witnessed them, walked with them, even embraced them. Real people who have come face to face with real ghosts.
Nestled next to the coast of San Diego, California, one can find the Hotel del Coronado. It has stood for over 100 years and will no doubt stand for 100 more. Presidents, prime ministers, and movie stars have all passed through its gates. And the hotel is still one of the greatest examples of Victorian architecture. But since 1892, strange reports have been circulating about the ghost of a beautiful young woman named Kate Morgan, an apparent suicide. Her story captivated a respected criminal attorney named Alan May, who was determined to check into a very specific room of the hotel.
What can I tell you, Mr. May? As far as I know, room 3502 is the one that... Well, you were there last night. Didn't you hear anything?
Yeah, I heard the elevator, I heard the ice machine. Look, I'm not trying to be difficult, I just don't think that was the room. According to the stories, Kate spent her days looking out the window, waiting for her lover to come. The room I was in had no window. Besides, you said yourself the last 2 times they redesigned this hotel, they changed all the room numbers. According to all the records, that would have been room 302 in 1892. That's the room I want.
Let me see if it's free. This is very strange. According to the computer, room 3312 is out of service.
Is it supposed to be out of service?
No, it's not. You want it?
Yeah. In my line of work, gut feelings are very important. You have to trust them. You find yourself looking at people and objects and just knowing something about them. I wouldn't say that at that moment I believed that the room was haunted, but I did have a feeling that, haunted or not, this was Kate Morgan's room. This was where she was staying on the night she killed herself. At first, nothing unusual happened. At first. Hi.
Hi.
Any messages for Alan May in 3312?
Are you sure that's your room? 3312.
Yes. Why, is there a problem?
The computer says you've checked out. That room's out of service.
What can I tell you? I'm here.
I'm sorry about this, sir. I'll take care of it immediately. You have no messages.
Thanks.
Our original reason for going out here, I mean, we can sit in the car and drive along and count 10 or 50.
That night, I couldn't sleep. It was like I was waiting for something to happen. But what? What's wrong? Just follow me. Do you see it? TV's off. I spent the night in the chair by the window. Sometime before dawn, the face slowly vanished. I needed some explanation, and the past seemed like a good place to start. I don't think I was converted. I'm still not sure I believe in ghosts. I mean, a lot of things could explain what I saw. I'm just not sure what they are. A strange calm came over me. It was the kind of feeling I get when I've just agreed to take on a new case. To my surprise, Kate's paper trail still existed, and it told a very curious story. Kate was married and deeply in love with a handsome con man named Tom Morgan.
How many cards would you like, Mr. Fairchild?
I'll take 3.
Together they traveled the country under assumed names, never staying in one place for long, for good reason.
Here's your drink, Mr. Fairchild.
Well, thank you, Miss Bernard.
And here's yours, Charles. I put in 3 pieces of ice, just like you wanted.
Thank you, Lottie.
Your sister's very lovely, Bernard. I'll see your bet and raise you 50.
I think you're bluffing, Mr. Fairchild. I'll see your raise. Call.
Three aces.
Full house.
Someday, Mr. Bernard, you'll have to tell me how you did it. Night, Miss Bernard. You're a hell of a card player, Mr. Bernard.
You were wonderful, darling. Simply wonderful.
You were the wonderful one, Mrs. Morgan. You were so busy looking at you that I could have changed hands 3 times and gotten away with it.
You know what I'd like most, Mr. Morgan? I'd like someday to be able to wear my wedding ring out in public.
You will, Kate. If we keep scoring like this, in a few years, we'll be able to retire.
Actually, I was thinking maybe I'd retire a little earlier than that. I'm pregnant, Tom.
You can't be.
Well, I am.
Your job is to take their minds off the game. Nobody's gonna look twice at a pregnant woman. This ruins the whole scam.
Kate and Tom moved on. When she could no longer travel, Tom abandoned her. Kate waited for him to return, and waited. Sadly, Kate was to lose her child. Distraught, she hoped Tom might meet with her in San Diego. Kate had her child there and waited for him, hoping he'd come back to her. Kate checked into the Del Coronado and spent the next few days getting up her courage to confront Tom.
Do you have a Mr. Tom Morgan staying here?
No, there's no one in the register by that name.
Do you have a Mr. Bernard registered?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, Mr. and Mrs. Bernard checked in yesterday. Whom should I tell them is calling?
No, it's all right. That won't be necessary. Just tell Mr. Bernard that his sister stopped by, and perhaps I could leave a note.
Later, that same evening, they found Kate's body. She had died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That poor, lonely young woman waiting for a lover that would never come. Kate Morgan's story made sense to me now. Certainly it would explain the presence of a ghost, if that's what I was dealing with. Ghost or not, my heart went out to Kate. But as I returned to the Del Coronado that night, I had the feeling that I was missing something. Or had the police missed something? The police had missed something, something vital. The gun that Kate had supposedly used was a .44 American Bulldog. Yet the slug taken from her skull at the autopsy was a .38, a much smaller bullet.
I got your note, Kate. What do you want?
I thought I wanted you. I don't anymore.
What do you want, Kate? You want money? Is that it? You want a divorce? You can have it. Just tell me what you want, Kate. Don't be foolish, Kate.
You lied to me. You hurt me.
Kate, please.
Kate, behind you!
Tom picked up Kate's gun and fired it into the dirt of the potted palm on the landing. He placed the gun in Kate's hand and walked away. He just committed a perfect crime. Everyone believed that Kate Morgan had killed herself. That is, until 98 years later, when a skeptical attorney took up her case.
Weighted down by the tragedy he had witnessed, Alan May decided to tend to Kate's grave. He had purchased a headstone so Kate would not be cast aside in death as she had been in life. Later, Alan would discover that Kate Morgan had an earlier child who had survived. Unable to care for him, she had left him in the home of a close friend a San Francisco reverend who then raised the boy as his own son. And amazingly, that reverend was Alan May's own great-grandfather. In a moment, Alan May talks about his encounter with real ghosts. Alan May's experience with the ghost of Kate Morgan ran contrary to his training, background, and his very belief system.
For the last 18 years, I've been a practicing attorney here in California, primarily doing murder cases, homicide cases, dealing in facts, dealing in evidence, dealing in witnesses, the credibility of witnesses, and trying to separate fact from fiction in terms of what people believe they see and what they say they see. I've also served in Washington on the White House staff twice and as an assistant to several cabinet officers, again dealing with facts and dealing with what really has to be adjudicated in terms of reality. So this whole metaphysical experience is very bizarre to me. It's something I've never believed in before. I believe in it now, though, because not only did I have the experience of seeing what I saw, but I've got 4 or 5 witnesses who also saw it too. So I have to come to the conclusion I wasn't incompetent or non-compos mentis, but I was seeing what I saw.
Since the beginning, Hollywood celebrities have been very good to us on this show. We don't plug their movies and rarely get around to talking with them about their art or their talent. We simply ask them if anything extraordinary has happened in their lives that they'd like to tell us about. And that is how we came by this story.
Take a mirror. Any kind of mirror will do. Place it against a black background in a darkened room. Light a candle and position it so that all reflection in the room is blocked out and you are only looking into the mirror's blank, dark reflection. Gaze into it for a while. You might get to talk with and see the ghost of a departed friend or loved one. Before we dismiss this idea, we should know that the mirror trick is an essential part of experimentation being done by a lot of scientifically minded people, including this man.
Powerfully affected and changed.
Dr. Raymond Moody is regarded as the world's leading authority on the paranormal and afterlife experiences. His books include Life After Life, which sold 10 million, and Reunions, visionary encounters with departed loved ones. But it's not until you meet the man that you appreciate Dr. Moody is not just a theorist and writer. He's a practicing communicator with the dead, and that is where the mirror comes in. We heard about it while visiting one of Dr. Moody's weekend seminars in Delray Beach, Florida. Dr. Moody, in turn, learned about the mirror trick from the ancient Greeks.
It would be quite possible, I thought, to replicate at least one part of the near-death experience, namely the part in which people seem to see relatives or friends of theirs who have passed on, by a method which was well known in the ancient world, of evocation of the departed, or evocation of spirits, which was practiced, among other places, at a wonderful institution called the Oracle of the Dead at Ethereal, which was in the far northwest corner of Greece, a huge underground complex with corridors and passageways and dormitory rooms where people would stay, all opening out into a 50-foot-long central apparition hallway in which the archaeologists found the remnants of an enormous bronze cauldron. They were highly polishing the inside of this big cauldron, filling it up with water, and there in the complete darkness underground, lit only by the flickering flames, no doubt, of lamps, would cast a diffuse illumination. That would have made quite a spectacular mirror. And so I surmised that the apparitions were being seen by mirror gazing in the surface of that water.
Long before he heard about the Greeks, Dr. Moody had been experimenting with spirit evocation using mirrors.
When we gaze into an optical clear depth, which is the experience that you have when you're looking into a mirror when there are no reflections, but you're just seeing off into an infinite distance, or when you gaze into a clear pond and where there's no debris in the water and no reflections and no distracting objects in the water. Or, as we see in the cartoons, in a crystal ball, that we can see images of a certain very extraordinary kind. Images not like the mental imagery that we see, which seems to have no particular location in space when we try to visualize something, but no, really quite vivid, three-dimensional images, typically very beautifully colored, which seem to move across or through the optical clear depth. And it's not too surprising, I think, that our ancestors in remote times, in prehistoric times and so on, would have decided that this was a paranormal phenomenon and that what was happening was that they were seeing into the spirit realm. Quite a number of creative figures, painters and poets and novelists and so on, have used this technique of mirror gazing to get their creative inspiration for stories or to devise inventions, as Thomas Edison did. And so I created an apparition chamber in my own research facility by putting a mirror on the wall and surrounding it by a black velvet curtain to exclude reflections, putting a very comfortable chair in there below the mirror and with a light behind it, so that the subjects gazing upward into the mirror would not see any reflections, but would simply be seeing off into an infinite distance, as it were. And to my surprise, it worked a lot better than I had anticipated. Found very quickly that about 50 to 70% of the subjects under those conditions do, in fact, have quite extraordinary experiences. One very typical thing that occurs is that they say they see the apparition forming off in the distance, like at a distance in the mirror, that it comes forward and actually emerges from the mirror into the cubicle where they are. It stands or sits right in front of them, full color, quite dimensional, full size, and in 30% of the cases it's quite audible. The subjects actually report hearing the voice of the deceased person. One of the most common things people tell you who are bereaved is, if I only had 5 more minutes. And that's what these encounters typically are, saying those things that were left unsaid and patching up the relationship, smoothing over those rough spots, saying goodbye, saying I love you, and that kind of thing.
It is said that when a house is built on haunted ground, ghosts will linger within. Few of us ever check the history of our property, even though it might hold a dark secret.
Come on, darling. Let's get this over with. Die game or die hard, it's your choice. We give you this offering.
When Bobby Mackey and his young wife were looking to start a country western club,
Well, darling, here we are.
they weren't concerned about the past, just the future.
this great or what?
Yeah, buddy, it's great.
Come here. Now we get one of the mechanical bowls and put it right over there. This bar, we can use this for the bar. Great. It's a little messy right now, but I'll get it fixed up. Oh, I think get a couple pool tables and put them over here. And then, bright lights and country music.
Every journey starts with a single step. My mama told me that. On that spring day when I first saw the club, I thought we'd taken a step in the right direction. Well, I was wrong.
All the folks are dancing down here. Yours truly will be right here where he belongs, in the spotlight.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. No wonder this place is so cheap.
No. That ain't the only reason.
Excuse me?
Name's Carl. You must be Bobby Mackey.
How'd you know my name?
Oh, well, it's no secret you're moving in. I just thought I'd roll out the welcome wagon and sign up on a list in case you're hiring.
Well, let's talk later. Oh, this is my wife, Janet.
Meet you.
Hi.
Would you folks like to take a guided tour? This place is sort of a hobby of mine.
Sure. Janet?
Sure.
You know, I could have the power on for you by tomorrow.
That first day, Carl showed us around the place. He knew it like the back of his hand.
Plumbing all over the place. You want to see the basement?
Honey?
Hi.
Oh, ma'am, in your condition, I'd stay up here.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Nothing up here bites.
Nothing much. This place used to be a slaughterhouse, Mr. Mackey.
Well, you can call me Bobby.
Lord knows how much blood's been spilled on these floors. Mr. Mackey, don't come down here alone. I don't want you working so hard. Bobby's got enough help.
Yeah, okay. Carl, you hear something? Carl? I was not hallucinating. Carl saw it too.
Well, then you're both nuts.
Just don't get it, do you? There is something wrong with this place.
Janet, honey, believe me, the sooner this place is cleaned out, the better. Now, I know we're all a little stressed out, and you with the baby and all.
She's right, Bobby. You gotta move slow here. The things happen to people who move too far, too fast. No, I'm serious. The guy that ran this place in the 30s, he was murdered. Shot by his own daughter. Then she killed herself. And that's not all. Back in the 1890s.
No, now it's you who doesn't get it. You know how many crappy joints I had to play? How many drunks I had to dodge? How many cheap, no-count club owners I had to beg in order to get paid? All so I could save up enough money to buy this place. Now, I swore, honey, one day I was going to get off the road and bring the road to me. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Well, Bobby was right. We opened right on time, and I've never seen him so happy. I wish I could have said the same thing.
Come on, sugar, drink up. I'm buying that.
Honey, if anyone can drive a man to drink, it's you. Another soda water on the rocks.
Go easy on this next one, Jerry.
Lots of strange things have happened before. That night, the air seemed filled with it.
Come on!
Here we go again.
Dial 911 and tell Bobby.
The Mackeys wanted to get to the root of their nightclub's ghostly occurrences. They turned to psychic Patricia Michelle.
What's it mean?
It means, Look, I'd just as soon you and your wife wait here. Carl, can you show me the basement?
Yeah, sure. I guess.
Wait a minute.
Are you all right?
You didn't see the will.
You mean they're right?
Right. About what?
About everything. This place. Look, we gotta get out of here.
You go. I need to be alone.
There's an old story about a well in the basement. What got tossed into.
What does that got to do with anything?
Well, maybe everything. They said it happened 100 years ago. A woman was found murdered, all cut up. They caught the two killers. On the day of their hanging, the first man went down without a sound. Then the judge tried to make a deal with the other. If he told where he Where he put her head, he'd only get life.
You bastard. Tell us.
I'll tell you nothing.
Wait!
I curse you and men like you. Men who think that they can judge me. Any man who presumes to interfere with the work of the Dark Lord shall suffer for all time. May your God help you.
They say he was hung right outside.
Anything else you haven't told us? Why didn't you say something earlier?
Would it have made a difference?
You okay?
I'm fine. We have to talk.
You're crazy. Both of you, you're crazy. Now, what you're saying is in order to put things right, I gotta tear down my nightclub, dig down 100 or so feet, and look for a well that may or may not exist? And then I gotta reunite this woman's head with her body? Come on.
That's not all. I also felt a very strong threat, anger, directed at
I'm not doing it. I can't do it, and I won't do it.
Mr. Mackey, you're next.
What?
Whatever it is that lives here is determined to punish the men responsible for keeping it here. Today, the responsible man is you. You are the owner.
Wait a minute. You just wait 1 minute.
Are you sure? Nothing can be certain, but I take this warning very seriously. Talk to your husband.
Hey, baby, it's all right. We can figure something out.
No, it's not that. I'm going to be issued a subpoena to appear in municipal court. Richard Lawson is suing us for damages, claims we're responsible for what happened to him in the men's room. Emotional damages, he's calling it. He wants the court to order an exorcism or shut us down.
I guess Bobby made legal history. First ever lawsuit over a haunting. For some reason, Bobby didn't want me to go to the trial. But the night it was over and the verdict was announced, I found out why.
In an unprecedented ruling, the judge decided in favor of the bar's owner. The judge said the alleged ghost attack on Lawson was not the result of negligence. Therefore, Richard Lawson was not entitled to damages. Lawson responded by saying that any future incidents should be on the judge's conscience and not his, a charge the judge swiftly rejected. In Wilder, Kentucky, Chris Baelish reporting.
Well, congratulations, Bobby.
Yeah, hooray for the home team.
Could I get a glass of ice water? Make him a double, Vicky. I'm buying. Bobby, I just wanted to say that I... Forget it. You're not mad? Hell no. You know how much TV advertising costs these days? Anytime you want to sue me, you go right ahead.
Anyway, I felt funny when my lawyer told me who I was suing.
Wait a minute, I don't understand. What?
Well, I mean, I always knew that, or I thought that Bobby owned the club. I never knew that you were the boss. Anyway, it was nothing personal. It's for tax reasons, that's all. I'm still the owner. It's just the deed's in your name.
The ghost was sworn to punish the person who was keeping it here, the owner. Now I understood why Bobby didn't want me at the courthouse. So, I'm making this tape for a reason. In case something happens to me. Bobby did what he had to do, I guess. I don't know. We tried to sell the place, but nobody's buying. So All we do is sit here and wait. And wait.
To this day, Janet Mackey is listed on county papers as the owner of Bobby Mackey's.
I won't come in here alone because of what's happened to me in the past. It scares me because I honestly think that there is something here will hurt me if I'm by myself, because they're after me, no doubt about that. I think that the reason why Bobby turned the ownership over to me, that he's really afraid they're going to get him.
I certainly wouldn't put the danger on her and take danger off of me. I don't believe there was any danger to begin with. It was strictly a career move, a timely thing, a circumstantial thing, and had nothing to do with anybody being in danger, because I've never seen anybody in any danger in here whatsoever.
I think Bobby Mackey's very much in danger.
Local writer Doug Hensley spent 5 years researching the club.
That because Bobby Mackey has got on television shows and radio talk shows and whatever, and has mocked the spirits, and has teased them, and has said, there is no Alonzo Walling, there is no Pearl Bryant on my property or in my building. I believe the day is going to come, and it's been predicted by several psychics, the day is going to come when they are going to try to kill Bobby.
The attack in the men's room is still fresh in Richard Lawson's mind.
I put my hands in the wash basin right here to wash my hands. And as I put my hands in this basin, this metal garbage can right beside the wash basin just violently took off, and it slammed like that right into the wall, and it kept beating. And I turned around very violently to find out what in the world's going on, and there stood an image of a man. And he kept repeating to me the words, "Die game." And I was getting tingly inside, I got woozy, and I went out on the floor completely. I mean, I was out, and they had to call 911 to come in here and revive me from me being unconscious.
That ladder, it started right from that pipe right there. It started wobbling. It wasn't nothing like I'd ever seen. It had trampled. It just wasn't walking. It was coming towards her.
Just like in a spin, like a tornado type thing, banging against the wall and carrying on, and I couldn't move. And I thought, well, this is it, you know. I'm either dead or it's after me and my child.
Psychic Patricia Michelle witnessed the evil that lives within Bobby Mackey's.
I had these very eerie feelings as I started walking through this basement, cold chills, but then in my mind I could see a well, and when I saw it, I saw a head in it.
Bobby Mackey continues to play his music for the fans every weekend, who come out despite the ghosts.
There's nothing here. I mean, nothing to be gotten rid of. I don't think there's anything such as that on the face of the earth.
Well, if it happened to you, you would.
If you.
But you know, when you have something.
You show me a ghost. You show me a ghost, and I'll ride.
I couldn't show you because you're never with me down
there. I'll ride the mechanical bull in the nude.
Well, you ride it in the nude. You get ready because they're here,
hat.
and you might have to go. You might have to do that because they're here. And if someday they will grab you right from behind, you won't even know they're there. Well, I'll have to buy you one tomorrow.
About to get on a routine flight. Suddenly he pauses. He doesn't know why, but he's got to walk away. An hour later, the plane goes down in flames. It's dismissed as chance. Britain. A woman has a sudden image of a black mountain that's moving, with children trapped underneath it. 2 hours later, a Welsh schoolhouse is buried in an avalanche of coal slag. It's dismissed as coincidence. Northern Texas. An unidentified flying object is reported by at least a dozen people. Although there were no storms in the area, it's dismissed as lightning. Now, Time Life Books announces an important new library, Mysteries of the Unknown, a series that explores the most controversial phenomena of our time and tells you everything that can be known. The Midwest. A mother feels a sharp pain in her right hand. Far away at that exact same moment, her daughter screams as she touches a hot pan. Just chance? Or is it telling us something about our own untapped capabilities? Mysteries of the Unknown goes deeper into unexplained phenomena than ever before. It documents the facts and uncovers what people were never willing to talk about. Stonehenge. A visitor fashions a wire antenna in the shape of an ancient Egyptian symbol. He points it at the stones, and a surge of power rushes into his arm, knocking him unconscious. Was it all in his mind, or was it much more than that? To experience Mysteries of the Unknown, examine your first volume, Mystic Places, for 10 days free. Then decide if you want to dismiss it.
To order your first book, Mystic Places, call 1-800-532-1100. Examine it for 10 days. Keep it and pay just $12.99 plus $2.98 shipping and handling. Other books will follow, one about every other month. Keep only the ones you want. Cancel at any time. Call 1-800-532-1100.
According to the scale developed by astronomer and UFO researcher J. Allen Hynek, a close encounter of the fifth kind is defined as direct communication between aliens and humans. There are many who believe that what happened on November 26, 1977, in the southern part of England was exactly that. It was a frigidly cold Saturday evening. Just past 5 o'clock, families sat down to watch the news on the Independent Broadcasting Authority's news bulletin. Children were anxious to watch the cartoons that followed immediately after. At 10 minutes after 5, while presenter Andrew Gardner read about conflict in Rhodesia, the signal was interrupted by an unusual source. The broadcast copies from that day are a little scratchy and can be tough to listen to in places, so the following is my reading of the transcript. It sounded something like this.
Rhodesian nationalist leader Bishop Abel Muzorewa has accepted Mr. Smith's offer to negotiate an internal settlement based on one man, one vote. But, he says, there are conditions. These include stopping the execution of all captured prisoners of war.
This is the voice of Rilan, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the skies. We speak to you now in peace and wisdom, as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your world, so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on our worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in the Great Awakening as the planet passes into the new age of Aquarius. The New Age can be a time of great peace and evolution for your race, but only if your rulers are made aware of the evil forces that can overshadow their judgments. Be still now and listen, for your chance may not come again. All your weapons of evil must be removed. The time for conflict is now past, and the race of which you are a part may proceed to the higher stages of its evolution if you show yourselves worthy to do this. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this and exist to pass on the light of the dawning New Age to you all. You are free to accept or reject their teachings, but only those who learn to live in peace will pass to the higher realms of spiritual evolution. Hear now the voice of Vrilon, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. Be aware also that there are many false prophets and guides operating in your world. They will suck your energy from you, the energy you call money, and will put it to evil ends and give you worthless dross in return. Your inner divine self will protect you from this. You must learn to be sensitive to the voice within that can tell you what is truth and what is confusion, chaos, and untruth. Learn to listen to the voice of truth which is within you, and you will lead yourselves onto the path of evolution. This is our message to our dear friends. We have watched you growing for many years, as you too have watched our lights in your skies. You know now that we are here, and that there are more beings on and around your Earth than your scientists admit. We are deeply concerned about you and your path towards the light, and will do all we can to help you. Have no fear. Seek only to know yourselves, and live in harmony with the ways of your planet Earth. We of the Ashtar Galactic Command thank you for your attention. We are now leaving the plane of your existence. May you be blessed by the supreme love and truth of the cosmos. And after about 6 minutes, the message ended. The signal was turned back to the IBA, and a Looney Tunes cartoon appeared on the screen. So, was this a hoax? Many say absolutely, first pointing to the reference to the Age of Aquarius, which not only was a period of really great music, but is also very Earth-centric, and not exactly of universal concern. Secondly, if an alien presence had the technology for interstellar travel and the power to take over a television signal, then why not do it all through Europe, or globally, instead of a small portion of England? The television signal being broadcast was UHF, or an ultra-high frequency radio signal. 5 towers were reported to have been taken over by a powerful signal broadcasting on the same frequency near Hannington. However, nobody has ever come forward to take credit for the transmission. It's understandable that they wouldn't do it immediately after, with heavy fines and jail as certain consequences to their actions. Now, 40 years since this incident, the mystery still remains as to who really was responsible. Whoever, or whatever it was interrupting the signal that night, it certainly has provided us with a very strange but true story.
Thai social media users widely shared a clip of a mysterious man appearing in the middle of a highway in the middle of the night in Thailand's Surat Thani province. A dashcam recorded the spooky apparition, which looked like a man in a white shirt and blue pants, standing right in the middle of the road as the car drove by, inflicting a glancing blow. The shadow then disappeared. Some believe that it was a ghost, but others said it was just a shadow reflected in the car's windows or mirrors.
ประชิดรถมาก
Their case is one of the best-known UFO encounters in Australia. Members of the Knowles family say they ran headlong into an unidentified flying object in the middle of the West Australian desert. And official studies of the case reveal their story may well be true. One man has no doubt the Knowles saw something. He was the first to find them after their encounter.
It was not the normal type of trauma that you see on the road. It was definitely some other encounter that they'd come across. These people were spooked.
What was it that so spooked a family driving along a lonely stretch of highway on the Nullarbor? No one can say for sure, not even the Knowles family themselves.
Well, the best way to describe the experience was, it wasn't like reality, it was just like a dream, but it was real.
You couldn't say there is anything out of the ordinary about the Knowles family, Faye and her sons Patrick, Sean and Wayne. But something out of the ordinary certainly happened to them on January the 20th, 1988. They were driving the 3,500 kilometres from their home in Perth to Melbourne. It was 3 a.m. Sean was at the wheel. His brother Patrick was asleep beside him. The desert was cool and clear as they entered Majura Pass in the middle of the Nullarbor. Then, out of nowhere, Sean saw it. A dazzling white light headed straight for them.
He told me, "Hey, Pat, wake up. There's something in front of us." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Wake up and check it out." He goes, "Look at that." He goes, "It's a UFO."
Sean panicked, tried to swerve out of the way, but still the object bore down on them. But that was only the beginning. Sean put his foot down and sped off along the highway.
It chased us for about a half hour, and then somehow it got in front of us. It must went around us, and the faster we went, the faster this object went. And before we knew it, this object landed on a car.
Next, the unbelievable happened. To this day, the Knowles family are adamant that their car was actually lifted off the ground. If this is right, they were left suspended in midair. Sean, the driver, blacked out. The others became hysterical.
My mum was crying and screaming, just saying, "We're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die." And all I just thought was, "My God, this is it." You know, I just thought, why us? For God's sake, why us? And all I can remember then was we were dropped.
As the car crashed back to Earth, Sean regained consciousness. In terror, the family fled from the car and hid in the saltbush scrub. After a while, the object slowly moved away, and the Knowles headed for the nearest civilization, the Mundrabilla Roadhouse. What they didn't know was that Melbourne trucker Graham Henley had been driving on the same stretch of road that night. He arrived at the Mundrabilla Roadhouse just before dawn, just before the Knowles family.
This blue Telstar came in a hell of a hurry. And these three young fellas and their mother jumped out of it. They were all talking at once. And the funny noises that one of them was making, he was obviously scared, witless.
In fact, the Knowles were so scared, Graham Henley didn't get around to telling them what he'd seen on the Nullarbor that night. A bright magnesium type of light.
It just swerved and veered all over one side of the vehicle to the other, and I was, what the heck's going on, you know? So I sort of accelerated a bit more and kept going, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. Just faded almost to nothing. Back it came again, and I thought, goodness knows, must be a helicopter or a roo shooter or something like this, having a bit of fun, and I never took much more notice of it.
But after talking to the Knowles family at the Mundrabilla Roadhouse, Henley did take notice. In fact, he and another truck driver drove back to Majura Pass, where they found evidence that seemed to back up what the Knowles had said.
Everything was exactly where they'd turned around, the skid marks on the road, where they'd hidden in the bushes. One of the boys had cut the tops of his toes in the gravel, and you could even see the little drops of blood on the gravel and the sand and stuff where it was.
The incident and the Knowles captured headlines around the world. The police were called in, and the Knowles car was impounded. Experts tested it, but they could find no concrete evidence of an alien encounter. And so that was where the authorities let the matter rest.
No, I don't really think a lot of it has been investigated the way it should, but there was certainly, to my way of thinking, there was enough evidence to warrant a thorough investigation.
Certainly, something happened to that family that early morning.
Keith Basterfield is an independent UFO researcher, and he actually took the trouble to investigate the Knowles case. His report is exhaustive, but it's also inconclusive.
The manner in which the whole external factors came to deal with that family, in fact, probably has ruined us ever really knowing, because of the competing elements. The media wanting a quick story, sensational story, which is fine. That's their job. The police, who were disinterested once they found that they had a cookie UFO experience to deal with. The UFO researchers, because they couldn't really sit down to quietly explore the case. And the family themselves, because they suddenly found themselves the focus of an international effort when they were simply trying to get to Melbourne on holidays. I don't think we'll ever know.
Nevertheless, 5 years down the track, the Knowles family are still sticking to their story.
Oh, bloody oath, yeah. You betcha. They can think what they want, but I know what I know.
You almost forgot. Oops, these are mine. Oh, thanks. I got a baptism Sunday, so I want the flowers to look especially nice.
How you doing?
Oh, not so good, Cora. Can I talk to you a minute?
Sure.
Before I moved in my house, did you ever notice anything weird going on over there?
No. You think there's something weird going on there?
Sometimes. I know this sounds ridiculous, but do you believe in ghosts?
I believe in good spirits and in bad spirits. Why? You think you got ghosts in your house?
I just noticed something bad there. I can't see it, but I can feel it. Sounds nuts, doesn't it?
No. You're not the only person who believes in ghosts. There was this couple on TV. They take pictures of them. They lecture all over the world. Maybe I have last week's TV guide. Do you want me to see? I could give you their names.
Let me think about it. Thanks.
I'll say a prayer for you, Janet.
You feel that the relationship is kind of at a plateau stage.
Yes, I just feel like we're in kind of a rut, It's the same.
Now, let me ask you, have you expressed to your husband this dissatisfaction? I know you're mad at me, but I need you.
Janet, I'm so glad that you came.
What?
There was a thing in here. I swear it. I couldn't see its face. I don't know how to say this. It was so awful. It went right past me and it disappeared into the wall. Am I going crazy?
I thought I was going crazy.
You saw it too?
Uh-huh. It was standing in my kitchen. It went into the dining room, and then it disappeared.
Were you telling the truth the other day? You know.
Oh, Mom, I swear to you, Jack wasn't home.
Oh, Janet, I'm so afraid.
Tell them, Mom. Go ahead.
I was saying my novenas, and it came through the room right past me and went into the wall.
They don't believe us, I told you.
It's not that we don't believe you, it's just...
We're just trying to figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you've been watching too many of those horror movies.
It was real. You guys weren't there, we saw it.
Yeah.